Hi everyone, I'll be swatching the entire Daniel Smith line of watercolors. For this video, I'll just look at the first page, and I'll only highlight colors that I find interesting or those that have something important to note. So the next color I'll be swatching is Azo Yellow, which is made with PY151 or benzimidazolone yellow. And this is a really nice bright yellow color, and this is what I'm thinking of using once I run out of my Hansa yellow light, as it's a more permanent alternative. So the next colors being swatched are the first of Daniel Smith's cadmium hue paints. This brand does not include any cadmium pigments as they are heavy metals and they are toxic. So what they did is they made mixtures that imitate the originals. If you prefer to use the original cadmium pigments from another brand, please make sure you take safety measures like washing your hands after painting and not licking your brush or eating the paint. The next color I'll be swatching is Areolin, which is made with cobalt yellow or PY40. Like other cobalts and cerulean pigments, they are toxic, so please use the same safety measures mentioned earlier with the cadmiums. Also, I'd like to mention that Areolin fades to a brownish gray, so I'd recommend avoiding it if permanency is a concern. And some good alternatives to me include the benzimidazolones, but I will admit that Areolin is a really pretty color, which is disappointing to see that it does fade over time. So the next color I'll be swatching is Mayan Yellow. And even though I don't think I'll use the Mayan colors or the Primatext, it is nice to have more options, and I do think that the Mayan Yellow is a really nice hue. So now I'll be swatching quinacridone coral, which is made with the quinacridone red pigment, or PR209. And the quinacridone red pigments like PR209 and PR207 are some of my favorite colors because I really like how it dilutes into a nice salmon hue, which is one of my favorite colors. And it mixes really well. For example, it neutralizes or nearly neutralizes a phthalo green blue shade. So the two colors I'm swatching next are Permanent Red and Permanent Red Deep. And I'd be cautious of these colors because they do fade over time, even though they are less fugitive than Areolin. And some alternatives that I recommend are quinacridone coral, quinacridone rose, Daniel Smith's quinacridone red, which is a quinacridone rose, pyrrole red, or pyrrole red deep. I'd like to warn you that some of the next colors on this list are impermanent, which include the Anthraquinite Red, Alizarin Crimson, Permanent Alizarin Crimson, and Carmine. So while the Anthraquinite Red is used as an alizarin crimson substitute, this color does fade in tints. And this pigment is also present in the permanent alizarin crimson, so I would avoid it if you're worried about light fastness. And some good alternatives are Daniel Smith's Quinacridone Red, Quinacridone Rose, or Pyro Crimson. And then the Carmine pigment, which is made with PR176. There were some light fastness tests by Kim Crick that showed that it does fade, so I would also be cautious of that pigment. So what is being swatched now is the Alizarin Crimson, which is made with PR83. And we can see that we get this nice deep blood red color. And if you are worried about its fugitive nature, I'd recommend using the Pyro Crimson or something like Quinacridone Red or Quinacridone Rose, which are more permanent alternatives.
Always hold it pretty good now. Deep blood red. I can see how it can be useful for its deep blood red color. But yeah, it's fugitive unfortunately, so not going on my palette. Then there's the permanent alizarin crimson. I mean, this one looks brighter than the... This looks brighter than the traditional one. That might be because there's a Quinacridone red thing, like Quinacridone rose behind it. Or Quinacridone rose. It might be actually even more orangey because of the paraffin pigment in it. But yeah, I would still avoid it because it contains Anthraquinone red, which is impermanent, so... Pretty red. It's brighter than the original alizarin. It is pretty brighter than the original alizarin, but again, like the other one, it is impermanent, so yeah, I am going to mention that. And then we have Rhodonite, which might be the first check color. Okay, so Rhodonite is the first one, so Quinn Pink will be the last color before I pick up again. So now we have Rhodonite. So this is the first Primatech. Okay.
So now I'll be swatching the first Primatech available on the list, which is Rhodonite Genuine. And we can see we get this really pretty pink color once swatched out. I like to warn you that this color does fade from oxidation. So if you don't want that to happen, I'd recommend using Quinacridone Pink or Quinacridone Rose in place of Rhodonite. So the next color is Opera Pink, which is made with PR122 or Quinacridone Magenta, in addition to a fluorescent dye. And if you really like having fluorescent colors, this is a nice choice as it gives you a really bright pink. But if you are worried about light fastness, as it does fade, you can use the original Quinacridone Magenta pigment, or in Daniel Smith's line, Quinacridone Lilac, which still gives you a nice bright rose color. So now I'll be swatching Potter's Pink, which is one of my favorite colors that you can get straight from the tube, as I love the dull salmony pink colors, even though I don't use this color often. The next color on this card is quinacridone pink, which is made with PV42. It's a bright rose color, and I really like the hue a lot, and it makes a good magenta. But unfortunately, according to Guerra Paint, this pigment is no longer being produced. So once we run out, we'll have to find an alternative, and quinacridone rose is a good choice, which is the color shown below. Because it's made from a quinacridone violet pigment. It's really nice. It's a nice rose color. I have it. This is the only... Wait, this is actually the only Daniel Smith tube I have. I will mention that because I feel like... I was like, oh, this is like a unique pigment. I've never tried it. It's a nice rose color. It's pretty. I like it a lot. But yeah, no, this pigment has like so many different names that brands call it. Like Schmincke calls theirs magenta. Now it's quinacridone rose. Okay, this is probably... Let me just make sure it's in good area. Yeah. Okay, now my quinacridone rose. So this is... So now I'll be swatching the quinacridone rose, and like the quinacridone pink above, this color gives you a very beautiful rose hue. And I'd like to also point out that this type of quinacridone rose is very popular among the watercolor community, and someone notable that likes using it is Otto Kano, who says it's her favorite color that you can get.
Oh, this one is definitely more purplish. It's nice color. I like the quin pink more, but it is a nice rose red. It's really nice. It's bright, saturated. Good choice for a mixing primary. I like the quin pink more, but still nice color, this one. This one's now we have the quin lilac. This is what PR122 looks like. Or, this is what quinacridone magenta is. This is what is typically called quinacridone magenta, and this is the color that's used in the fugitive opera. This color is perfect but not. Why does this have a 2 in light fastness, the quin lilac? I never understood that. Like, I thought handprint said it was a 1. Or at least it's like fastest the quinacridone rose. It's a beautiful color. It's nice, but I do like the quin lilac. It's nice. I like the quin pink so the most, but I do like the quin lilac. It's pretty. And now we have quinacridone magenta, which is PR. So there's is PR202. Schmincke uses for their quinacridone magenta. When Schmincke calls their PR122 purple magenta. It's a little bit duller than the quin lilac. It's nice, but I'd probably go with the quin lilac if I wanted something more magenta. Pyro Crimson, I have no clue. This is Pyro Red Deep for PR264. And this is the one that... I do like this color, it's pretty, it's nice deep red. But yeah, I don't know why it's after. It probably should have gone after permanent alizarin crimson. If I'm being honest, it is not as red as whatever. Yeah, no, I think this color should not be where it is. It should not be in like the rose color range. It should be like a deep red. Yeah, no. Okay, now we have our final ones, which are Quin Fuchsia, Mayan Violet. Okay, so Quin Fuchsia, Mayan Violet. I'm probably gonna skip over those. I will mention quin pink and quin magenta. I will mention that. Quin fuchsia. It looks brighter, but rather than the other color too. It's pretty, but yeah, I don't think it. It looks brighter and redder. Pretty, but yeah, I think if I had to pick one. Okay, I think. Why don't you move these up again? Okay, Caroline Violet's what I'll move everything up. Okay. So Caroline Violet. So, Mayan Violet, I'm not even gonna mention, but unless I find a color interesting. Okay, it looks like a nice. Yeah, I don't trust the Maya tones, so it looks pretty. It's granulated, so that's pretty. Granulation's pretty, but yeah, it's pretty. It kind of looks like Cobalt Violet, but it's not like that. So, yeah. Bordeaux. I only know one other brand having this color, and that's Rembrandt. Rembrandt's the only brand that has this color outside of Christmas. I think Bordeaux's a fair color to call it. Yeah, this is like a wine red color, like a grape wine red. Yeah, I think I'd go with pretty, but yeah, I don't think I'd go. I like the. It has like a deep red color, like a deep grape red color, like a deep wine red. Now we have cream violet. Okay. So this one is. Okay, this actually looks kind of like Bordeaux. It's kind of like Bordeaux, but it's not. It's a more prominent color than Bordeaux. And this is the other shade of PB19. It's nice. It's nice. It's a deep magenta color. Yeah, I probably still. Yeah, I think I just stick with the Quinn Lilac and the Quinn Pink. These are pretty, but yeah, I think Quinn Lilac and Quinn Pink are the way to go for me. Okay, Permanent Violet. I'm not gonna mention anything about it. This is what Pure Indigo Violet was originally. This was originally Pure Indigo Violet, but they changed it because the pigment got discontinued. It looks kind of like a, honestly, like Permanent Violet, Quinacridone Violet, Bordeaux, Quinn Lilac, and the other one. They all look very similar. Like Quinn Lilac, let's go to Quinn Magenta, honestly. Permanent Violet looks like Quinn Magenta. It really does.
So now I'll be swatching Caroline Violet or PB29, and what we get is this deep burgundy hue. And while I haven't tried Caroline Violet myself, I've seen painters who consider it to be essential to their mixing palette. So the last two colors that I'd like to highlight are the Cobalt Violets, and the one I'm currently swatching is made with PB49. And this version of Cobalt Violet reminds me of the Web Color Magenta, which I think is a really pretty hue. But I'd like to warn you that if you do live in a humid area, you should be aware that Cobalt Violet pigments can fade from humidity. So now I'll swatch the Cobalt Violet Deep, which is made with PV14. And this is the version that I think M. Graham uses. And from what we see here is that we get something that's darker compared to the Cobalt Violet above. And it also looks like it's slightly bluer to me, even though it's not as bluish as Dioxazine Purple. So here are the swatches of the Daniel Smith page 1 watercolor dot card. And my favorites from this are quinacridone coral, potter's pink, quinacridone rose, and cobalt violet. So which ones are your favorite from this list? I'm curious to hear from comments below.